Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salalo Makwidiri. And in a bit, we'll be shifting our focus back to the continent of Africa, particularly in Uganda, the capital, Kampala, where police have detained dozens of people as they took part in a banned anti-corruption protests. Police and the military deployed heavily in various parts of Kampala, where small groups of protesters had gathered on a Tuesday. The protesters waved placards and shouted slogans denouncing corruption. One wore a t-shirt bearing the words "Speaker must resign." At least 45 people were detained by security personnel during the crackdown, according to Chapter 4 Uganda, a human rights group that is offering legal services to the detainees. And to give us more insight on what's currently happening in Uganda, it's a journalist and editor with Kigezi News based in Uganda, Musinguzi Goodluck, who's joining us via our virtual platform. And I think this is going to be an interesting conversation because I think we're starting to see a pattern. I think if you've been watching the news, following Salam Media closely in the last 2-3 weeks ago, then you'd know what has been happening out in other parts of the continent, and I think Uganda following suit with mass protests. Musinguzi is joining us via our virtual platform, and he's coming to us live from Uganda. Musinguzi, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media, and welcome.
This is my second time. The last time was last year. I was in the car. I'm glad.
All right, we seem to be experiencing some technical issues with Musinguzi. So while we're sorting that out, while my technical team is sorting that out, I think we're going to have to take him over the phone. But just for some context, there's been several government MPs who are facing corruption charges, and with mass protests calling on Parliament Speaker Anita Among to resign after she was implicated in a graft scandal and sanctioned by the United Kingdom in June. Tuesday's march was organized on social media with the hashtag Stop Corruption by young Ugandans. Some 15 million citizens out of a population of 45 million are under the age of 35, according to the latest census data. And at least 5 of those detained have been charged and remained in custody until July the 30th. They've also been accused of being a common nuisance and also being idle and disorderly, according to a charge sheet seen by one of the news sources. Human Rights Watch Uganda researcher Oram Nico condemned the arrests and said they were a reflection of where Uganda is at the moment. And as far as respect for those rights is concerned, opposition leaders and rights activists have accused Museveni for failing to prosecute corrupt senior officials who are politically connected. And I think we have Musinguzi Goodluck. He's a Kigezi News editor based out in Uganda, and he's going to give us some more insight on this. Musinguzi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
All right, perfect. Again, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time here on Salam Media. I think first and foremost, if you can start by giving us context about the recent protests out in Uganda, and I think as I mentioned before, there seems to be quite a pattern where young people on the continent are starting to go out into the streets, to kind of display their dissatisfaction and well, to a certain extent, disdain for political leaders. We saw what happened in Kenya in the last 2-3 weeks ago, where young people also took a stand, went out to the streets to challenge Parliament and to challenge the leaders in that part of the world. Kenya, is it also Uganda, is it also a similar case where young people are organizing and they're standing up against authority?
Thank you very much. The talk about corruption has been on in Uganda, and indeed we have seen also other youth and other people across the continent talk about this or against it. In Uganda, the accusations or counter-accusations have been on both against government officials and members of the opposition. And some time back, when we had the new parliament, we lost our speaker in this term of government. He died, and the deputy took over. And then sometime early this year, using social media, some young people started exposing the wealth of people, especially members of parliament. Then somehow it moved so fast to start sharing the way money was being spent by the current speaker. And therefore, the debate started again. Now, along the way, the leader of opposition, Right Affairs Mpuga, who is from National Unity Platform, was mentioned to be among people who received 500 million Uganda shillings as a service award. And indeed, it eventually went out that it was 1.7 billion Uganda shillings given to all the commissioners when their term, when they closed 2.5 years, their political parties, both the ruling and the opposition party, leading opposition party, were supposed to make changes on the commission of parliament. And therefore, the leadership in parliament, maybe the commission thought that these people were not going to come back. So they gave themselves a service award of 1.7 billion shillings. And so that one started a very big debate. National Unity Platform moved to remove Honorable Mathias Mpuga from even the commissionership he had retained. And therefore they said, we cannot have you when you're tainted. Then also the other side of the ruling party, the debate also started. Now, meanwhile, as that was going on, we saw youth in Kenya start their demonstrations. And therefore I wanted to give you that context. But remember, also in Uganda, we have had demonstrations before which turned violent and led to the death of people. And like in Kenya, in Uganda, the president of Uganda gave a State of the Nation address. He addressed the country. He gave the journey, how the country has come from 1996. That's close 40 years ago, when there was anarchy, and he said he was trying to build a new foundation for Uganda. And therefore he said he wouldn't allow people to bring in elements of anarchism, that the rule of law should be left to handle those who are handling corruption. Now, on Tuesday, we saw, the army, the police, or a day before and on Tuesday, they're in the streets. For like 5-6 hours, nobody was showing up until that time when a few pockets of young people started entering through different routes of town, of the city, trying to access parliament, and they are arrested. So far, we have almost 70 people accounted for. Those who are following them, as you said, Chapter 4 and others, showed on their social media that they had visited these people in where they are being kept in Ruzira. And therefore, the point is that when you are discussing this, you have to ask yourself, in Egypt, Tunisia, and others, there was the Arab Spring. In Kenya, the Jains have led to this. Can this also happen in Uganda? Are we the same? I think you need to look at different dynamics that are not making maybe the Kampala demonstration. And remember, one of the media writers here in Kampala had saying that the government of Uganda learned from what Kenya never did. Then the youth in Uganda also learned from what the Kenyans were doing. So how this has been handled across Africa has not happened the way it is happening in other places. That is the context I can give you.
And I think you're making a good point. With striking the parallels between the two. But I want to focus on the lived realities of the young people in Uganda who are at the forefront of this demonstration. I'm sure this comes because of the lived realities. I'm sure there was a tipping point. If you can just paint a picture for us about what the youth are going through, in Uganda, for them to ultimately take to the streets to say, this can't be the status quo anymore. This can't be our lives. We saw what the young people in Kenya have done. And you also mentioned, the Arab Spring out in the north of Africa. The youth of Uganda, what are their lived realities that one can say ultimately, saw them going to the streets and saying, this can't be our lives anymore. Something really needs to change, because I fail to believe that this is just because of corruption. There has to be more. Corruption is all across Africa, but it's not very often that you see dozens of protesters going out to the streets and having these kind of violent interactions with police. I'm sure that this scandal of corruption was one, that one could call the proverbial, stick that broke the camel's back.
Thank you very much. I really agree with you. First of all, the youth in Uganda are like in other parts of Africa. Those who are leaving school are very many. They don't easily find work. But the way our constitution is structured is that we have a centralized part and then a decentralized part. So you find most of the resources are shared between the local government where these people come from and the center. And therefore, the other question in terms of governance, and actually also I agree with you, people have been asking, when you walk to Parliament, do you engage the Speaker? Do you carry away, do you push her away from her seat? When you remove her, do you have you removed the Parliament? When you remove Parliament, that's one arm of government. Do you remove government? And also other voices that are saying we see international players, especially some embassies, that are being connected with some of the non-government organizations that are funding this. So is it beyond corruption? Is it, do they want to change government? So here in Uganda, is that if you were to look across Africa, I think here we first of all have food, enough food. While we have had a few times when you find some parts of our country people are dying of hunger, but it's something that can be mitigated. Normally, we also export food. And therefore, that is one thing. And also the way Uganda is made is that most of us come from the different families where almost all of us own land. Whether your father has land can always cut a piece for you. Now, the youth who are there are saying, we want jobs. The government of Uganda, and that's what essentially what President Museveni was saying. He said, I told almost the industries had collapsed. I have now made sure that we have attracted investment that has brought in almost 10,000 factories that are employing young people. We are working on trade, security. Eastern years, we are trying to make sure that everything is there for us, for the young people to have all these opportunities. But of course, the young people will say, we see the money being misused in one way or the other. So while the youth have, for example, a day after, and that was yesterday, President of Uganda, through his office, has opened up what they call a skilling hub, and he has set up these centers in the different parts of Uganda. Now, what is interesting is that yesterday, when the one of Kampala was opened, you could see hundreds, if not thousands, of young people who wanted to come and skill themselves. Then, apart from that, there are different projects or programs that have been put to enable youth to access money, to put in their businesses, those who can. And therefore, also when you go up country, you ask yourself, are these people part of the elite in Kampala who are on the streets? Also, part of those who were demonstrating were seen to be students. Some of them were students from Kigezi University, where they paid some money to go on the street. So, and large, it's a confusing. While young people are saying we want jobs, the government is also saying we are setting up this the oil, in the western part of Uganda. Once the oil project kicks up, something is going to change. So, for me, when you look at even those young people, for example, those who have their children who are going to school, do they participate? Do they want to see violence when their children are going to school? So really, it might be more, but we have just 16 months to go for elections, and therefore some members of parliament are saying, if you think we are not doing what is right, then the young people go and participate in the democratic process. You be elected, come and participate in this, but without maybe causing anarchy. So the point is that the issue of jobs, the issue of opportunities is one that is being talked about. But you can be seeing that our budgeting process is somehow, compared to other countries, it is somehow, open. Everybody is able to participate, and young people, it's on record, it's on the internet. One can Google that young people have been given lots of money, billions. And the latest one, we have what we call PDM, a partnership development model, where people have been now being supported at the last mile. You have to be in your village, in a group, and you are supported if you want to do something.
I think you touched a bit on elections, and we know that President Museveni will be contesting those elections. If there's one thing that he said that has really, kind of stood out for me, is that stern warning that he, sent out to demonstrators, and saying, well, you are playing with fire. How has this, statement being interpreted by the public and human rights groups? Because this sounds like a serious threat. Protesting, I assume it's a case also in Uganda, is a right. People have the right to go out into the streets, to vocalize their dissatisfaction. But when you have a president of the country, throwing out a threat as intense as you are playing with fire, I'm sure that has sparked some kind of outrage and concern from various parties. Musinguzi, are you still there? All right. We seem to have lost Musinguzi, but we're at the top of the hour, and I think we're going to wrap up that interview. Musinguzi, are you still there?
Yes, I'm back. I'm on. Yes.
All right. I think before we lost you for a moment there, I wanted to ask about that stern warning coming from President Museveni, where he has warned the demonstrators that they are playing with fire. How is this statement being interpreted by the public and also human rights groups? Because it's a serious threat.
Yes, it's been there before. He has not said this before. And as I said, the past demonstrations have been based on issues that led maybe to the discrimination of some people, and a few people ended up fighting, and we lost so many people here, for example, in Kampala. And therefore, his warning maybe was around that. But, and again, as you are saying, the human rights groups and every other person, they are saying the threat shouldn't have been there, that people should have been left to demonstrate peacefully. But the question is, when you do that and maybe it gets out of hand, they destroy property, the children who are going to school, the young people, what happens to that? So it's kind of a balance that for him as a leader, he gave his stance. The young, the 70 young people who were arrested did come and expressed their dissatisfaction with the corruption, and therefore the deployment on the streets, the security said, was to maintain peace and order. Because if you go back before the 2021 general elections, you remember that the leading opposition leader, Honorable Chagrani, Sentam Obobi Wine, was arrested, and the young people, the followers at the time, one of them made a statement that he believes he was almost killed, and that one sort of sparked riots and burning of tires and shooting, and it was a mess. And therefore, I don't know whether that is the background where the president of Uganda was making that statement, because he was saying, what have not we done? Can we follow the rule of law? He was saying, we are seeing some infiltration, that it might not be only corruption that is being put in front, but there are some people who are trying to cause change of government, and therefore will not allow these foreign interests to come and overtake. And like you have talked of one of the NGOs which you have mentioned to be helping, I saw on social media where they put out some of their funders, and some of their funders are the ones who are being accused in Kenya for pushing this. So it's quite of a balanced and interesting thing that as Uganda moves towards getting their oil out of the ground, that many foreign interests have come up to stop them. And therefore, so they keep using that to say, we have people who don't want us to move. And lastly, on this point, when the late Muammar Gaddafi died, President John Museveni said, Africa is vulnerable, that somebody in a different capital must decide on what will happen, that we can't protect each other. And therefore, is it a question of, even last time the ambassador we had here, she was one of the people who was in those countries where the Arab Spring was. Her tenure ended, another one has come. The one in Kenya, the US ambassador in Kenya has been seen to be pushing for investments and they're like, and then eventually chaos started. And therefore Uganda has not taken it lightly, that they just keep quiet and at the end of it all maybe lose the foundation they have built. And as I said, 16 months away, we'll be electing a new government. And therefore, the young people are being asked, can you come out and participate? And the other thing I would want to tell people is that some members of parliament are in prison. Not only members of parliament, but also officials we call permanent secretaries. These are the accounting officers of the different ministries. We have one called Geraldine Sadi, who was arrested last week, and she's in prison with members of parliament. So the question is, when you are saying there is corruption, do you go and remove government? Will government accept? And therefore, we are in between that one. They have called another demonstration today, 25th. But apparently, I can say Kampala is a bit peaceful. Children are in school, and we wait to see if others are coming. They gave out 7 points that they wanted the government to work on, and the first one was to ask the Speaker of Parliament to resign.
All right, I think we're struggling a bit with connection, but we're going to leave it there with Musinguzi. Good luck. Musinguzi, thank you so much for giving us your time. Really, really appreciate it. And I think at some point, we need to ask our African leaders when they're going to start taking responsibility instead of, focusing and blaming foreign interests when, well, they are, in essence, the ones responsible for the country and moving it forward. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to shift our focus to climate change with the new climate change bill signed into law by the president, and how significant is it going to be in the steps of South Africa's efforts to combat climate change. More on that after the break.